Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. This is going to be the first of two reviews that are sponsored by Wargames Atlantic. I had mentioned in a prior video that they had very graciously, kindly sent me a couple of boxes to review for them. I've been very excited for this kit ever since I saw the Kickstarter for it. What we're looking at are the Citizens of Rome box for the Gangs of Rome game produced by Footsore Miniatures. And there's a couple of things on this that I did some research on this box because there's some branding differences with this kit compared to the very recently released Age of Chivalry box that I wanted to just point out because I think I figured out what's going on. So with this box, you'll note, first of all, it's fully illustrated front box art, which I love. You know that I'm a big fan of that. I think this is very well done, very effective. It's beautiful box art, great work. So where that differs from some of Wargames Atlantic's other stuff is that normally they have an illustrated piece here and then they have photos of the models on the front. But what I realized is that there are two other boxes, the Cores War, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and also the Reptilian Overlords boxes, where I believe Wargames Atlantic is producing them on behalf of other companies that own them. And both of those boxes have fully illustrated front covers. And again, now that I can juxtapose these two boxes side by side, you'll note there's two other differences. One, again, I mentioned fully illustrated here, not fully illustrated here. But what surprised me is that instead of saying the Decline and Fall range, here it has a picture of the Footsore logo, whereas with the Age of Chivalry box it says Age of Chivalry, part of Wargames Atlantic's range. So I think what we are looking at here is, unlike this, which is Wargames Atlantic miniatures that are branded to go with Baron's War, which is a game that's produced by Footsore Miniatures, so done in partnership. But this is Wargames Atlantic product branded for Baron's War. What we're looking at here is Footsore Miniatures produced by Wargames Atlantic. So just a little bit of sleuthing on my part that I think I've sorted out why there might be some branding differences between this one and the, as I mentioned, very recently released Age of Chivalry box. But I don't think that detracts from the kit at all. I just wanted to provide some background there. So again, beautiful front cover box art, really like that. And then if we flip over to the back, again, if we compare this to their Age of Chivalry box, very similar in terms of styling, maybe some fewer pictures here than over here, but again, this is very effective. And again, I like the isolated models in the back so you can see what's going on. So, and with that out of the way, let's open up the box here and see what we got going on inside. So, as I open it up here, as we've seen with the prior two Wargames Atlantic kits that I've opened up for us, no bases in this one. A couple people pointed out in the prior videos that Wargames Atlantic actually sell bases, so you can get them on the websites. If you're ordering direct from them, it's easy enough to just choose whatever base option that you want, be it round bases for Baron's War, square bases, what have you. They've got them on the website, so easy enough to just drop those into your cart as well. So 6 models per sprue, 5 sprues, so 30 models per kit. So we can look at one of these sprues because they're all identical, as with the other kits that we've looked at together. And you can see straight away this kit is absolutely brimming with bits. And let me just say, I went through and took some notes on this kit. There's so many bits that it was almost overwhelming for me. But I wanted to point out one of my normal criticisms when I'm looking at sprues that don't have enough options to build everything the same way. Like if there's 30 models, I would want to see 30 spears in order to equip them all the same way. That doesn't apply to kits like this, where these are very clearly designed to go with skirmish games. Same thing with like a Frostgrave kit, for example. You would never see that because the models aren't designed to be built that way. No lunatic, except for maybe someone like me, would be buying this kit to equip everything as a unit on a battlefield for a game like Hail Caesar, for example. So that criticism doesn't really apply here. So let me just do a quick overview of the sprue here. And let me say a couple of things just up front here. I was actually a little bit nervous when I first saw the CADs, sort of the 3D designs for these sprues on the Kickstarter page, because there were a couple of details that looked kind of puffy to me, like the hands in particular. If you compare the sprues to the CADs, they almost look kind of swollen, and that's it's a forgivable issue if that had even manifested on these sprues, because that's a very difficult detail to get right with plastic injection molding. You may know from experience that very few kids even have open hands like this, because most things are either holding a weapon or a shield, something like that. But I was very happy to see that let me get a little bit closer here on some of these hands. That's not the case. These are fantastic, very well done, very crisp. As with all the Wargames Atlantic stuff that we've seen so far, I'm particularly impressed with how clean they are. As you can see, there's no flashing here on either side. This is where they would all show up. You would have, some mold lines that you would have to clean up. So again, as I mentioned before, I don't know what they do, but they're doing it right. So you can see absolutely brimming with bits here. In terms of specifics on the content here, again, I actually went through and took some notes, because I I was losing track of just how many bits there were and what was what. So what we're looking at, I guess what we'll start with are bodies, because that seems like an obvious place to start. As with the Age of Chivalry box that we looked at, you can see there's 6 bodies on the sprue, and I don't know if this is a new direction for them or what, but they're continuing to separate the torsos from the legs, which I quite like, and I'll at the end of this video put a couple of these together just so you can see them assembled. But what, especially for example, a skirmish game, what I like in that is that it allows you to pose the torsos in different directions. So you could even have the same combination of torso and legs, but look completely different, because you have one turned to the left, one turned to the right, something like that. So of course, that will be most important, is to see how these fit onto the legs in terms of matching up the two sides. But at least superficially, I think that's an excellent direction for them to go. For heads, let's take a look at the heads here. You can maybe see, even at a glance, there's a ton of heads. I count 17 actually total heads within this kit, and it's a cool mix. There's most of them are unarmored. There's only 3 armored heads, but you can see a lot of different expressions, lots of different hairstyles, some with beards, some without. You even got this guy here that's got like a mask on. That was one that was pictured on the back of the box art as well. Very good detailing. I'll flip it over here, because again, as with the last kit, some of them are facing one direction and some are facing the other. But yeah, I'm very pleased with this. I'll say too, I had mentioned I had 2 things I wanted to note before going into detail, so we're mid-detail here. But that I, for the longest time, have wanted specifically a multi-part plastic gladiator kit, a gladiator box. And I had hoped for more gladiator bits on this sprue. On that note, one of the armored heads here is kind of a semi-Murmillo style helmet. And that's the only gladiator head. Now again, there's an asterisk on that, which is that this kit is not designed to build gladiators in the arena, right? So this could very easily represent like a Spartacus style revolt, because the gladiators aren't going to be dressing up like this to fight in the streets, right? This is to represent citizens of Rome, street fighting, or gladiators street fighting. So nobody's going to be equipping themselves as they would in the arena. So initially I was a little bit disappointed by the lack of gladiator bits. Again, there's this one helmeted head, or I should say like iconic gladiator bits, because any of these could reasonably represent gladiator bits. And then this sword here, this is a Sika, which was, I think, originally a Thracian weapon that was adapted for gladiator combat. But other than that, there's not much here. But again, I mentioned this actually in, I think, my first Wargames Atlantic video, that one of the most promising aspects of Wargames Atlantic for me is their digital arm and what they call add-ons. And I would call them, bits, upgrade sprues. But that with 3D printing, you could take a kit like this, where the bodies are perfectly acceptable for example, arena gladiators. And if Wargames Atlantic puts out a kit of gladiator upgrade add-ons called additional weapons like nets, maybe a trident, some additional armored heads like what you would expect to see gladiators fighting for in an arena, it just makes for a very powerful combination, I think. And I think I'm actually going to do a video where I talk about, the kind of the future of 3D printing and how it's going to affect plastics, but that's just a little bit of insight there into why I think kits like this are so strong. The other detail on this that I like is that the bodies while yes, they could absolutely represent citizens of Rome, as the box suggests, they're generic enough that really what we're looking at here in terms of the attire is it could reasonably represent like 2,000 years of human history across multiple civilizations. And I think I'm actually going to proxy up a couple of them at the end of this video, just to show you what I'm talking about, that these, while are excellent as Roman citizens, gangs fighting in the street, I think they could also represent Greeks. They could actually even represent some like Dark Age miniatures, but we'll get to that at the end. Continuing on our bit trend here, again, we looked at the heads. Again, I mentioned there's the one gladiator head that is located here. And then there are two armored heads. They're here and here. So again, looking at the bits toward the center here, in terms of arms, and I broke them up into right arm and left arm because, again, we're talking about a skirmish game where not everything is necessarily going to get equipped the same way. And I am a corporate controller by trade, so that's kind of how I visualize things, is with lists like that. But in terms of right arms, I counted 5 sword arms, including that Seiko right here. And a couple of them, I would call them gladius style weapons. Some of them are a little bit long for what you would consider like a traditional gladius, but of course not all swords in Rome were a gladius. Some of these, this looks like a cavalry sword, but that's more the traditional size for a gladius. And there's one down here. So 5 total sword arms. I count 2 spear arms, which you can find here and here. There are 2 pila, actually, pila, located down here in terms of ranged weapons. And there's 1 axe bit down here, like a woodcutter's axe or something like that. There's 1 stick bit. Again, we're staying with right arms right now. I don't know if that's supposed to attach to something or if it's just, I'm going to beat you with a stick. I'm fine with either. And then there's 1 sling bit. This is a right hand, so you could very easily take any of the other right arms. There's lots of, and I'm only talking about arms holding things. There's lots of right and left arms that are just empty, as you can see here. But there's 1 sling, and then there's 1 right-handed dagger option, and then 1 club, which I see right here. So lots of options in terms of right-handed weapons, which of course would be the dominant hand for most people and thus most miniatures. For left arms, I counted there's actually more daggers than anything. So there's a couple of daggers down here. And let me note too, a lot of the miniatures have this kind of like linen wrap as a form of armor, which I think is just super cool. Because you can imagine a bunch of impoverished gangs in Rome not having access to anything like, early chainmail or any kind of steel or even bronze weapons, or excuse me, for armor. So they would just, wrap their arms up like a prison fight and then, get into some knife fighting. So yeah, we see 3 dagger arms for the left hand. There are 2 bows. One, I don't know if it's an oversight or not, but one thing that I found interesting was that there's only 1 quiver. At least I only see 1 quiver for 2 bows. So maybe it's a one-shot bow, I don't know. But again, there's something of note. And then there's 1 cool bit that's up here that's just a rock, just the hand with a rock. That, as I said, there's a couple of bits where it's just the hand that you could then, cut off of an arm and then replace it with that particular weapon bit. Speaking of bits, non-weapon arm bits, there's a couple of interesting ones. Toward the center, you might have already spotted them. There's 2 what look to me like wine jugs, and one's with the left arm and one's with the right arm. And I just think that's a really cool bit to include, but the fact that there's 2 of them implies to me that this must have some in-game significance. And maybe if you guys know, if anyone's seen the rule set, just drop a comment, let us know. But it's a cool bit just for like objectives, what have you, but it seems like a very specific thing to include 2 of within this set, unless again they have some kind of in-game meaning. So 2 of those jug arms. There's unusual again for Wargames Atlantic, there's like pouches, like bits that here and here. So I really like the inclusion of that stuff. Call them, accessories, what have you. There's 2 shields, slightly different styles, here and here, which are great. And then there's 2 greaves, again back to accessories. So those look like they would just strap straight onto any of these legs. And that would look pretty cool. Sword scabbards, there's 2 regular sword scabbards. And they look to be slightly different sizes. This one's a little bit longer than this one. And there's 1 dagger scabbard. So overall, I think this is a very successful addition to the range. This is a great kit. The torsos, I forgot to mention in going over kind of the body types here, that there's this one. So again, 6 bodies per sprue. There's 5 that have like regular tunic. This one's almost like bare-chested. And then there's this one, which has a cloak that could go with this bit to make a like kind of cloak and dagger kind of guy, or it could very easily stand alone and you could put a different arm or weapon on the left-hand side here. So as I said, again, another fantastic kit. I'm going to cut here to show you some models that I've mocked up just with some of these weapon types, just to give you an idea of what's in the kit, see how they fit together, and then potentially show you a couple of kit bashes with some other bits that I've got lying around that I think would look pretty neat. And here we go. So what I've done is I've assembled 1 sprue's worth of miniatures. The ones on the left-hand side, these 3 are built entirely from pieces from the kit. And on the right, these 3 are almost entirely built from pieces from the kit. I've just added a couple of bits from my bits box to show off what I feel is the wide utility of this kit. But just to show you a couple, I think the results kind of speak for themselves here. I did almost no cleanup work on these. I just snipped them off the sprue and assembled them, and you can see there's basically no flash on these guys. And any that is there, you would be able to clean up just with the side of your X-Acto knife. But yeah, I found them intuitive to assemble, very easy to put together. Even with the 2-part torso leg combo, I had mentioned earlier, the only concern one might have with that is whether or not these 2 pieces meet up. You don't want to have, like, part of the torso overhanging with the legs. But in no instance did I find that was an issue. Yeah, on all of them, really, very little cleanup work required. And as I mentioned, the variety of poses that you can achieve is really quite impressive. So over here, what I've done, again, assembled the miniature and then added on a head, and in this case, a shield option from Victrix to make it look like he's got some more military gear to do with the pila. Again, in terms of the poses you can achieve, it's quite something. Same thing here. This guy, this guy looked kind of Hellenistic to me, so I gave him a hoplite shield and then a head from Victrix as well. Different kit, but you can see they make convincing lightly armored Greeks as well. And then this guy even is, again, I said I thought that they looked kind of like, I don't know, early Vikings. This would be maybe a Viking sailing around the Mediterranean. I don't know, because even like these legs you could paint up as skin. Again, if it's in the summertime or he's on a ship or something in the Mediterranean, or paint over them, because it could very easily also be kind of skin tight leggings on them as well. So anyway, yeah, I'm really thrilled with this kit. I think this is another excellent addition from Wargames Atlantic, and is something I would highly recommend that you guys pick up. In fact, as I was assembling these, I was thinking about other ways that they could be used, other games, things like Frostgrave, but I actually found myself wanting to assemble these as a Mordheim warband. So I think that there's a lot of potential in this kit to use in a lot of different ways. So as ever, guys, thanks for stopping by. I've got another kit to unbox for you from Wargames Atlantic that should be coming up a little bit later this weekend. And then I've got a couple other painting-related videos that I'll be putting out shortly as well. So appreciate you, and until next time, happy gaming.